Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. The website, as always, is dsmsports.net, where you can find all the episodes and more content. And, of course, subscribe, check out the podcast, look back on all 200-plus episodes of the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. What a fantastic show for you guys today. I really enjoyed this interview. Came away inspired. A really interesting look into the brand building aspects of high-level people. My guest today on the podcast is going to be Alex Cervasio. You're really going to enjoy this. I've known Alex for, we were just saying, like 10 years now probably. And this is the first time we've had a really long conversation like this where we get to really geek out on all the things that he gets to do. He is a co-founder of The Daily Coach, a daily newsletter which is really well known in collaboration with George Raveling as well as Mike Lombardi and Kamadi Ramsey. He also does a lot of consulting as well, working with CEOs, with athletes, and most of all, college coaches. He has a lot of experience working with college coaches, as high-level ones in men's basketball and football. You'll hear him talk about his relationship with Buzz Williams, just one of many that he's worked with, and a really interesting look at how coaches have evolved over his time, over the last 10 years, as social media has become a much bigger thing, and now even more so with NIL, and what can you do for a student athlete beyond helping them hopefully try to win championships, but helping them grow as a person, helping them grow their brand and take advantage of that time in the spotlight for the many of whom won't go on to become high-level professional players. So you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Alex, but first, before we get that chat, this episode's helpful tool. This episode's helpful tool is shooting up to the top of the App Store rankings. It's not the first time it's been at the top of the App Store rankings, as it has also been there in the past few months as well. And it's an app called Dream by Wombo. It may not be a tool you'll use every single day, but it's one of those things where it's worth checking out why it's up there and what users are enjoying about it. And it's essentially an AR artwork tool. You put in a keyword, you select a style. If you want, you can upload an image for reference, which I recommend if you're using it to try to create an asset for your team or league or brand. And then it spits out a piece of art. You can download it. It does have a watermark. You can easily crop it out if you like. Of course, you can also upgrade to the premium version. But it is at the top of the App Store for a reason. And if nothing else, it's an interesting look into sort of the present and the future of this creative space, of the ability for something with using artificial intelligence to take a keyword here, a couple of keywords, a style, and maybe a reference image, and all of a sudden, boom, you have this graphic masterpiece. Now, it's not going to replace creative artwork too soon, I don't think, in the sports space or the brand space and social media creative space, but it's heading that direction. If nothing else, it's worth to take a look, step back, take a look at your assets, whether that's photos, graphics, styles, previous graphics, videos, infographics, whatever it might be, and think about if you were to try to reverse engineer that, how would you go about that? If you needed to get, even how you look through your photos now, if you look through your camera roll, through your GIFs even. We do this all the time when we search for GIFs on Jiffy, or Giphy, however you want to pronounce it. And we look for things that may express a certain sort of adjective, a feeling, an emotion, or maybe there's a certain play in the game. So as you're starting to really look at the huge and growing assets in your sort of digital asset management system, a DAM is very common in the space that I work in, or even the clips that you have, or types of posts that you have. If you want to search and find something specific for your designer to work with, or for you to use at the right time, or for the right moment with celebrating an athlete or a moment in time or historical achievement, how can you start to just throw as many tags as you can on an asset in your file folders to be able to say this is surprise, this is happy, this is sad, or this is humanizing, or this is brand building, or helping with our brand messaging, or whatever it might be. The more you can sort of build into the knowledge of your assets, the more you'll be able to do moving forward as we head into this AI space, or at the very least be able to streamline how you're creating content now, so that when your designer is sitting working in Photoshop or InDesign or Illustrator, wherever it might be, and you need that right photo or that right clip or even that right inspiration, that you can search for it and spit it out pretty easily. So super interesting to see. Again, this episode's helpful tool is Dream. The app is called Dream, but if you search Wombo in the App Store, or just go to the App Store rankings right now for free apps, because on iOS, it is the #1 app in the App Store as I speak. So check it out, Dream by Wombo. But more importantly, stick around because we're going to have a phenomenal chat with Alex Cervasio. Back from this episode's opening segment, and I am so psyched for today's guest. We really just should have started recording from the beginning, so we had a great conversation offline. But now we're going to record this one. I'm joined on the podcast today by Alex Cervasio. He is the president of the Daily Coach, founder of Cervasio Consulting, and just is a great mind. Works with coaches, athletes, executives, brands, and just does incredible work across the space. And Alex, thank you so much for coming on today. Welcome to the podcast.
Listen, thank you so much for having me. Like I was just saying before, I feel like we've known each other, been following each other on Twitter for 10 years. So this has been a long time coming. So I'm excited and just really appreciate you for having me on.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so psyched to pick your brain. We're going to learn a ton. I already have learned a ton. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, Alex, tell us about you. Tell us about your career path, all experience you got along the way, building those relationships, and any tips for folks that want to work in your space.
Yeah, so I mean, really, I hate to say this, I've been a nerd athlete my whole life. I grew up playing hockey from a young age, played all the way until I was about 18, 19, played lacrosse and golf in high school and college. So I was building websites on GeoCities, in the late 90s. I was getting net zero free internet before my parents knew what the internet was and were paying for internet. I don't know if you remember Palm OS devices, but I was selling custom Sony Clie graffiti skins for the stylists on sports forums. So, I don't want to admit that, but like this is early 2000 stuff. I was on forums. I've always kind of had the entrepreneurial work for myself mindset, taught myself how to code for the web, taught myself Adobe, learned how to edit videos, all that stuff. So it was a lot of self-taught stuff. I used to read a lot more than I do now, but I used to read a ton of books growing up, watch a ton of videos, and just consume as much tech nerdy stuff. I grew up, I would, when I stayed home from school, other people would watch Wheel of Fortune. I would watch Tech TV with Leo Laporte and Kevin Rose, who ended up founding Dig, and now this week with Moonbirds and everything. So that is just kind of led me down a path where, I went to University of Florida. I actually started down, a pre-law poli-sci path. Didn't want to do that. Ended up working for the University of Florida basketball team my freshman year, kind of as an internship during the year. I was a manager. I was the clock guy for Coach Donovan. So I literally, all I did in practice was run the clock. And this was right when, Facebook and social media kind of came on the scene and was kind of a passion. So I was, picking Coach Donovan's brain. Donnie Jones, who was the assistant at the time, who ended up going on to be a head coach in his own right, was a close friend of mine there. And that just led me down a path of, hey, listen, I need to change my major. I'm gonna double major in sport management and get business. I actually was playing club lacrosse for UF, became the president of the lacrosse team. While we're there, we're thinking about fundraising opportunities. Spun up, Jersey Shore was on at that time, Jim Tan, Lax, which raised a ton of money for the team and all that stuff. So it's always kind of been an entrepreneurial mindset of how can we leverage, the new platforms and new tech, really digital marketing avenues to maximize whatever I was doing. Graduating UF, everything kind of went from there. I took that and serendipitously got introduced to George Raveling, who is a longtime Nike basketball executive, who actually was one of the main reasons Michael Jordan signed with Nike. He became, we kind of hit it off. I was managing a coaching event. He was speaking. I helped him set up his PowerPoint, and this is probably 2010. And we hit it off, and I drove him to the airport. And he goes, "Hey, I'd love to fly you out to California." And I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
So I flew him out, spent a week out there, and the rest is kind of history. I owe basically everything to George Raveling, mentor, best friend. He's 85 years old now, but he opened doors and got me in rooms and introduced me to the right people at the right time. This is right as, like I said before, Facebook and Twitter and really social media was coming on the scene. And how can you leverage that as a coach, for recruiting, for fundraising, for, really just marketing yourself and your program. So from there, it's just kind of serendipitously, one relationship led to another, which led to a client, which led to a project, which led to a new opportunity. And as we were saying before the call, never turned down an opportunity, really just kind of was everywhere I could be.
Man, just so cool. Like you go to college, you don't really have a plan. Your plan was pre-law at the time. You have your passions that you decide to chase those passions, and it's serendipity, like you said, and it turns into a career now. 10, 15 years later, we have all these incredible experiences and clients behind you. And just, was there a moment along the way where you're like, okay, like I kind of know what I'm gonna do, like to make a living, or are you still figuring it out?
Well, I think that at that time, Neil, like it was 2011 when I graduated UF. I ended up actually getting my master's at Drexel. They had a master's sport business at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing while I was, basically making sure that I had enough education to do what I want. But Coach Raveling, really, he was still running Nike basketball at the time, day to day. He entrusted me to say, hey, listen, I want to remain relevant. I want to make sure that I'm still teaching everyone in this new digital age. And he saw the future. I'll get to his credit. He tapped into Twitter, before anyone really did. So we spun up, a whole strategy. I built him a website. We put a newsletter together. We had ghostwriters, content stuff. It was, a pseudo media company for a legend. He's a Naismith Hall of Famer. I said, he helped sign Michael Jordan. He's the guardian of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, which was a whole nother podcast we can get into. Wow. I recommend listening to him on Team Ferriss to hear more about that. But yeah, it was really the right place at the right time, and just trusting that I knew enough about the subject matter because it was so new, and there was, you couldn't go to get a master's in social media at the time. You couldn't really stand there in the middle back then and know how to build a website, edit on Adobe, cut a video together, shoot it, and then package that almost, as a one-stop shop. Obviously, as I grew and I scaled, I was able to hire and outsource, content creators and editors and coders and all the devs and all that stuff. But at the time, it was really just me and my passion for sports and connecting that with my knowledge of how to create content and build things, on the early tech stacks.
So let's go into this because I'm super interested already. It seems like old hat in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years that everyone aspires to be a creator or an influencer, whatever term you want to use. And there's always different levers they have to pull. Like it'll be social, it'll be different platforms on social. It might be photography, might be video, might be TikToks, might be shorts, might be podcasts, might be newsletters. And there was no playbook back when you were doing this with George Raveling initially. You just knew that there are these new tools, a way to build a brand and convey, the lessons that he wanted to get out there. So how did you go about learning that a newsletter was something to do and how to build what that brand strategy could look like for an individual like George Raveling?
I hate to say it, but a lot of trial and error, obviously, but a lot of reading. I read a ton. I follow a ton of, I think, really smart people that I try to emulate online. Being in forums, YouTube wasn't as prevalent back then, but watching YouTube videos or any videos you could find, and really teaching myself. I hate to say this, and University of Florida would probably hate to hear this. I didn't learn anything there that I utilize today, really. And I think that's not a knock on them, but more of a testament of what people can unlock in themselves now, especially. You can learn anything online. You can teach yourself to do anything. It's really just how do you fit that into an overall, whether it's a strategy or omni-channel approach to making sure that it's in the right, place at the right time in front of the right person.
Yeah, that's really well put. And I'm definitely all on board about that, about going on YouTube and finding what you want to learn about, Googling what you want to learn about and learning it. We're still learning a decade plus after graduating from college. That's for damn sure. If you're not, you're missing out.
Listen, every day is there's something new. I'm not as good as I used to be at staying up to the minute, whether it's on a new feature or the algorithm shifted to this or that. But as long as you're following the right people, reading the right things, you're head of 98% of the industry of the world, really.
Totally. So, what did it look like to build a brand for a coach? Back when you were getting started, and it certainly has evolved over time, no doubt. Initially, it might have been, hey, we want to get the local beat writers and then maybe the SI writers of the world and sporting news and ESPNs of the world to write positive stories about us and our program, about the coaching staff in the program. And then all of a sudden you have a chance to tell your own story and post on social, and became it's a thing that I can just let someone else do for me versus something I can do that actually can, showcase some of my brand, my program, and raise money. Like you mentioned earlier, raise donations, recruiting. So what did that brand building or incentives for the coach look like back then? And how did you guys seek to sort of frame in yourself working with coaches, frame the opportunity and work their way up to maximizing it?
Yeah. I mean, you said it right there. I think before the internet and social media, really coaches were at the mercy, so to speak, of the gatekeepers. And a lot of those gatekeepers were the beat writers, were the newspaper people before them, or the SIDs at the university. What interview did they set up? What do they say? How do they pitch it? And the ability to control the narrative and really the target audience of what you want to say, how do you want to shape it, and build your brand is something that it took me a few years to really, I think, for people to see that. I started talking to coaches, like I said, back in 2010, really. And then it started clicking eventually that they got it. They understand it. There's a new generation of athlete coming that lives online, that was born online, that social media is part of their daily routine. Let's make sure that, the famous Nelson Mandela quote about, speaking in the language they understand. Let's make sure we speak to them in the language that they understand and not the language that we understand. And at the end of the day, if you can, if you're a coach and you're recruiting someone, there's something that's going to differentiate you about you personally, that is going to appeal to that young student athlete, the young student athlete's mother, father, grandma, aunt, whatever. How are you showing that when they step on campus that, obviously they're going to play basketball or football, whatever sport it is, but you're going to take their child and turn them into a better, father figure or a better mother figure or a better human in general, that they're going to create life skills and all that. So really leaning into every coach's uniqueness, what is different about that? How can we, and everyone talks about niches now. What is that coach's niche that differentiates them that no one else can copy? That is something that's going to appeal to the decision maker, in that whether it's the student athlete themselves or in their family or in their circle, to get them on campus. So recruiting was the number one thing. Branding the coach is the number one goal. All the other stuff about fundraising and being the media entity for the program, that piggybacks on all the great work that the athletic departments and the SIDs do. But to answer your question, I think first and foremost it was controlling that message, not letting the gatekeepers dictate what is said about you or what you're saying or what people think about you.
Yeah, no, it's well put. And I think it almost goes without saying that if a coach feels like they can get even 1% of a leg up in recruiting, then they're all in. Like, hell yeah, like teach me.
You're seeing it now. I'll say the same. Like in 2010, 2011, when I was having this conversation, it was like falling on deaf ears. The last 5 years, there's no reason for me to even explain a lot of the things. It's, I get it. How can you help me? What can we do? I have this person. How do they fit in? Everyone sees it. But I will say that, the coaches that are successful are the ones that are authentic, that do not try to imitate or, copy someone else. If you make it your own, just like any creator, any, person out there, if you're putting something out there, you have to own it. And people see through that, especially nowadays. It has to be raw and it has to be true. And it has to be the same person that they see on social media that they're going to see if you're sitting in their living room and you're offering them a scholarship to come play for you.
That's spot on. Like you can, it's easy to portray a certain type or a certain brand on social, but if you get there and you meet them in person or you play for the program and they don't match what they are in social, then that inauthenticity, the word gets out pretty quickly, and all of a sudden you lose your credibility when it comes to shaking hands with moms and dads and recruits, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I say the same thing whether I'm working with a coach or an executive or a brand. Like, a lot of times people don't follow logos or, even mascots or whatnot. They follow people. And if you can humanize that brand, that team, that company, whatever it might be, through the leader, then it makes it a lot easier, whether you're selling something, whether you're recruiting someone, whether, you're trying to educate. There's a trust there and there's a connection there where it reduces friction. They're willing to consume that content. And then it makes it easier because then you don't have to go out of your way to overproduce it and, get all this big budget because it's just real, unvarnished who they are.
So, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of like some of those videos that, who was it? Maybe it was Chris Mack making in his office a couple of years ago. And just like that kind of off the cuff stuff I love for sure. But I want to dive in a little bit on just the nature of social in the college athletic space and the athletic space in general, in sports and pro sports as well. And we've all kind of remember some of the headlines years back of like, there's a ban on social media during the season. And it was the team captains that came up with it. We swear it wasn't the coaches. And so like you have coaches who are like, if it's not directly, associated with game planning or game film review or practice review, whatever it is, then it's not worth my time. Like, how do you overcome that? Was that an element that you had to overcome early on? Is it still an element now that, hey, there's a lot more good than bad on social? Yeah, it'll take 5 minutes of your day. Or yeah, one of your student athletes or one of your recruits might see something negative thrown at them. I mean, definitely will, unfortunately. So like, how does that balance come into play, and how do you make sure that they see the good and make the most of the good while understanding that there will be some stuff as well to overcome?
Well, I think nowadays, it's a lot different conversation than even like 2016, 2015. I think that the way you have to approach social media is, or any digital creation, that you're putting out there is, you have a job, whether it's to be a head coach or whether it's to lead a company or whatever it might be. Your day job is to succeed there. And I don't want social media or content to get in the way of what you're supposed to do to move that ROI. Mm-hmm. But if you own your time and own your schedule, and like I said, and you're putting out stuff that is honest and truthful to what you're actually doing, then the social media and the content part can become part of the process. It doesn't get in the way. It should amplify what you're doing and really return more value on what you're putting in, on your small network, whether it's, a small basketball team of 12 guys or girls, whether it's a small company with, 50 employees, or maybe it's a big company with thousands of employees. What you're doing internally, and you provide, an opportunity to really leverage social media's reach to anyone everywhere who wants to learn, be educated, or maybe buy your product, or, end up going to play for your school. So a lot of times, I think that coaches in general, athletes, they're building a brand on campus. I say it all the time. Like, when you're on, let's just say, University of Oregon's campus for 4 years, you could pick up the phone if you're playing basketball for Oregon or whatever major university it is, and a major booster, a major donor will take your phone call because you are playing football for Oregon or basketball for Oregon. Mm-hmm. The minute you step off campus, unless you have that relationship or that one-to-one, or maybe you won the national title or whatnot, it's a lot harder for you to get in those doors and those phone calls and meetings. So the brand building process on campus, I think coaches are starting to understand that social media, yes, there's obviously negatives to everything. But there's a lot of positives there that, with the right education, with the right system in place, with the right processes, whether the player becomes, an NBA, all-star or WNBA player, whatever it might be, there's going to be 98% others that go into real estate or investing, or they have a foundation or charitable cause that all are platform dependent and brand dependent, that hopefully you're leveraging your time while you're, a student athlete at a major university to develop that name, develop that brand. And ultimately, platforms come and go. You could have 100,000 followers on Instagram or 10,000 followers on this or that, and 10 years later that platform's gone. But if you become a local real estate agent or a local financial advisor, or you have a foundation or a charitable cause or a charity golf tournament, it's going to be, whatever you did while you were playing for that school is going to be impacted by the platform that you built, the audience that you were able to construct, and really the relationships that you were able to hopefully honestly build. So it's not a one-off transactional thing. It's a, hey, listen, how can I help you? I'm not expecting anything in return. And maybe 5 years later, there's something comes around that really syncs up with what they're doing. So yeah, I definitely don't think that conversation is necessarily happening as much anymore. I think coaches, you're seeing it now. There's educational components in the off season, making sure they know the do's and the don'ts, the best practices of how to leverage that. Some are better than others. Some athletic departments and schools are better than others. But I think everyone's cognizant that this thing is not going anywhere. Let's embrace it. Let's educate everyone on how to best utilize it. And let's be honest with ourselves that if we do it correctly, there's going to be some wins. And, unfortunately, there's always going to be, a negative connotation in the shadow. And you just have to ignore those and, focus on what you can control.
Now, I want to kind of dive into so many different directions here, which is always a good thing, a good problem to have on the show. I think, like, you look at coaches, for example, like social media should not be seen, or same with executives or anyone, is not seen as something that gets in the way or a burden. It's, if you want to, make sure you're winning championships for the years to come, and you want to recruit the best, part of your recruiting job is maximizing social. If you want to set up your athletes for success, if you're telling mom and dad that we're going to make sure that your son or daughter is going to be successful in life, part of it is helping them build a brand and maximizing that spotlight in that moment. And it seems like that's starting to become a selling point as much as anything, especially now in the quote unquote NIL era, which we can get into a little later as well. I want to touch on the athlete side, because I think you made a really great point there, especially for some of these college athletes in college in particular, or even pro sports with their shorter careers. They have that opportunity, that moment in the spotlight, the moment where they are the big man on campus, big woman on campus for however long they may have to maximize that opportunity. So, like, when you're looking at what are the best ways to maximize in that window, take advantage of that window of building that brand that maybe transcends platforms, like what goes into building that game plan, that strategy of really making sure that they, whether it's working with outside content producers or teaching them to produce content, finding what they're best at, finding what they're passionate about. What does it look like to take someone on and say, this is how we're going to make sure that we build your brand and not just your following.
Yeah, I think like I always go back to, what is your passion? What gets you up in the morning besides, playing basketball or, playing soccer or whatever it might be. Do you read books? Do you play video games? Do you want to design golf courses in your free time? Whatever it might be. Everyone has something unique that is maybe a little quirky, or, maybe a little that they don't share enough. But you got to lean into what makes you outside of the playing surface. And if you can do that, then that differentiates you from every other player and every other athlete on your team, on your school. And now with the ability, like I said before, I think the big problem that I see nowadays is the student athletes, they want to build their brand and grow their following, but they aren't taught how to create that content. They aren't taught how to pick up a Sony camera or Canon, shoot themselves, set up a tripod, then quick edit it, put it out there, produce, their own day in the life series on their Instagram. A lot of universities that have the budget, they have, the football team has a couple of video guys or whatnot following them around, helping them do stuff. But a lot of the times I definitely think that it goes beyond that. Like if you love gaming, set up a Twitch channel, build that audience, lean into it. If you love reading, set up a book list, spin up an email newsletter. There's a lot of things that athletes should lean into that differentiates them beyond just, a double here, or, a touchdown here, whatever that might be. So I think the one thing I would say is, especially with NIL, the thing about NIL is a lot of these brands are coming to these athletes strictly as, hey, I want to pay you X amount of dollars to reach your followers on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And if the athletes haven't, dedicated enough time to building, that following, that audience, that engagement, really, then, they're leaving dollars on the table. So I think that a lot of that needs to go into the process of the athlete. The minute they step on campus is, yes, I'm here to first and foremost get an education. Second, to succeed at the sport that I have a scholarship or play. But third, I'm going to make the best of my time and create relationships and lean into my passions and develop myself as a human being and as a person. And, I just happen to play basketball or football or volleyball or whatever it might be. So, I always go back to more opportunity to create content, the better. We were speaking on the call before, I remember Gary Vee and D-Rock starting his vlogs, years and years ago. Mm-hmm. If everyone had a D-Rock following them around with a camera, and we could all put out the content that I'm always yearning for. But I know that's not possible. So you need to be strategic about what you're doing and what you're trying to shape and who you are, because at the end of the day, I always go back to, you got to be honest. Like what they see out there, they need to see on, on social media, in person, on the playing field, in interviews, all that. Otherwise, the engagement won't be there. I see it all the time. You see it all the time, I'm sure. All these accounts, they have hundreds of thousands of followers and 2 comments or 8 likes or all this stuff. You have to, it's a two-way street. It's not just something that I build and forget. I have to build it and continue to get that instant feedback loop. Positive, and a lot of times negative. Hopefully ignore the negative, but use the positive as an opportunity to get better every day and continue to be a learner, whether it's getting better at your sport or, to read more books or develop your craft. That's going to happen when you retire from playing.
Oh, I love the lessons in that, and it's so important. And so it sounds less intimidating when it's like, hey, what do you love to do? Do that, and here's some ways to really maximize.
There's no wrong answer, Neil. That's the thing. I think a lot of times people are, as long as it's it's within reason. Like there's always right. There's always some that are out of bounds there. But I think people are worried, especially young kids are a little different nowadays coming up. The athletes that are getting recruited now are different than the athletes from 5 years ago, even. They're willing to put themselves out there and lean into maybe their unique passions in such a ways that was only maybe stuck in a subreddit that they read on their own. Now if you're into this or that, you can kind of talk more about it or lean into it, and hopefully maybe if it's something very unique. And I always go back to books, because I think books from an athlete perspective is something that just is an opportunity. It's very easy to pass a book to a teammate in the locker room. Hey, this really helped me think about this. And that might unlock something on the court or on the field that they never thought was in them. So, I just think that nothing's out of bounds necessarily in terms of how niche it can be. Just stay true to who you are and figure out the best way and the best people to surround yourself with to extract that out of yourself.
Totally. Differentiate yourself. And it's half the battle right there. I had a great conversation here with Alex Cervasio, founder of Cervasio Consulting, also president of the Daily Coach. And I want to kind of talk a little bit big picture here of, just the where social media is at and how it fits into what we're seeing from athletes and coaches and among others and brands on social, is this the idea of, remarkability, or to use a less safe or less euphemistic term, inflammatory language, or hot takes, or savage content. Like what's it like if you see whatever? I'm trying to think of some good examples, like when Arkansas does their post game like football wins, when they have like their clever ways to show wherever Lane Kiffin train crashing. Like, what's that like for Sam Pittman? Is he part of that conversation? Most likely, is he saying just, hey, here's kind of the general sentiment that I'm cool with, you guys go with it? Same idea with like athletes as well, or coaches in general. Like, is there this inclination to, we have to do something that's a little bit against the grain, or not even against the grain, but a little bit like incendiary to get our message out there? And this is like the way it is now. Like, what should coaches and athletes make of that, and how are they currently encountering it, I guess?
I think it goes back to the same thing I was saying earlier. Like, you have to be genuine about any response or anything put out there. You can't, like, the minute you're gimmicky or you're saying something you don't know what you're talking about, people see right through that. And then it becomes a negative. It detracts from the end goal that you're trying to get out there. It detracts from, obviously everyone's trying to cut through the noise. They're trying to get that engagement. They're trying to, rise above all the other content that's being put out there. But at the end of the day, there's something, whether, I always say this, whether you're an athletic program, a fan base, a team, even a family or a friend group, everyone's got these like, inside jokes or, things that, shared history that they yearn back and recall back to. Being able to say that in a way that everyone knows that, wow, okay, that person gets it. They're genuine. They're relating this back. It's going to cut through. It's a unique way. And really, maybe it shows a side of the personality that you don't see in the post-game press conferences. They don't see on the field. They don't see, in the tabloids and, in the sports, in the beat writer stuff. So I get it. I understand it. I just go back to making sure if there is an opportunity to cut through the noise and make a comment or make something that is going to go potentially viral, just make sure it's who you are. And if someone asks you about it, you're like, we had some fun with it. What'd you think?
No, I think that as I think through some of the teams that are more likely to do that kind of quote unquote savage content, it generally does align with who their coach is. Like, I think about, the Auburn basketball fans who meme the hell out of their opponents when they lose. And Bruce Pearl, like, I could totally picture him like being all about, like, totally cool with that. Like, and same idea with Sam Pittman and the Arkansas example I just gave, or Lane Kiffin and some of the stuff that they do on social with Ole Miss. And it's certainly it needs to be part of that brand, I guess, to your point. And like, is that more of the mandate now, that like the coaches that do have a little bit of swag, like is swag a positive brand thing, or can you still be a, even Nick Saban has, is making little quips here and there nowadays. Do you need to like be more than a coach, or be more than a, trust the process kind of coach to stand out these days and appeal to recruits?
Listen, I think first and foremost, you're hired to do one job, and that's to hopefully inspire, the student athletes that you're coaching, but at the end of the day, to win games and to build the program and to, be the CEO of the program. A lot of things, I think a lot of people think that there's a lot of things that go into that become distractions from the reason that they hired you in the first place, to win games, to lead the program, to hopefully get a national championship. I personally am of the thinking, of the thought process, that everything matters. Everything matters. If you don't treat everything as the most important thing to success, then you're going to miss something that could have helped you do something. People always say, I don't have time for social media. I don't have time to do this video. I don't have time to do this, all of that. You make your time. As long as there's a strategy in place and there's a thought process in place, there's no excuse for coaches, for players, to make sure that they have the time, that if this is going to help us win, or this is going to help us recruit this kid, or this is going to help us really just cut through the noise and get the brand out there, that, hey, this is a new, turning point. We're turning the page. It's a new program. We're going up. We're going to go for this or that. Then I think that you're missing out on something. I think you might look back and say, why didn't I do this? Or why did I miss this? And obviously there's priorities, and rightfully so. But the coaches and the programs that I see that downplay this or that and don't go attack it like everything truly matters are the ones that end up, cycling through coaches, cycling through, transfers and whatnot. There has to be, and like I said, honesty with yourself that, hey, this is this is who we are. This is what we want you to be a part of. And this is about culture, whether it's an athletic program, whether it's at a startup business, a DTC brand, a major law firm, whatever it might be. You have to transfer that ownership of what you're doing, and everything we put out there and everything that we prepare for matters. And I think sometimes it gets lost in the bigness of the job. Rightfully so. I get it. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars. But you have to understand, how am I appealing to the next generation? How am I appealing to their decision makers, their mothers, their fathers, their grandmas? How am I appealing to the boosters? How am I appealing to the fans? And all of that, thankfully is kind of helped by digital, by social, by all these platforms that have unlocked a lot of value creation in the past 10 years that people just didn't have in the past.
And at the very least, too, like a great positive thing as well coming out of this is, I think in the past it was almost like glorified the guys that stayed in their office till 4 a.m. and then went home for 2 hours and came back at 7 a.m. and fired up the game film again. And like it was this grinding culture that was glorified, and now it's like you see coaches that are showing that, hey, our assistants go home at 6 to be with their family, or our assistants are we're not missing family events, or we have there's more to it than just the X and O's. Like there's more to being a coach as a result of that, and it's good to be well-rounded. And I think that's hopefully something that will continue to thrive. And I want to get at you with this question as we come to our shareable stat here, is what does the coach of the present of the future look like? Like what will the the head coach in 10 years look like when they're coming in? Are they going to be a quasi influencer themselves and really get it? Or are they going to be like someone that can inspire their students and will be doing dances on TikTok along with their student athletes? What are you looking for as you seek to help modernize what the position of a coach looks like in all capacities?
Yeah, I think the coach, the 21st century coach, is the CEO of the program. I think that the X's and O's is to some extent, obviously that's what got them there, but as Coach Raveling always says, what got you here is not going to get you where you need to go. So like, how do you continue to learn and continue to bring in those that have our expertise in certain areas, whether it's social media, whether it's brand building, whether it's weightlifting, health, and diet and nutrition, all those stuff, they all go together. Like I said, everything matters. So I think going forward, you're gonna get the job because of what some coaches are expert in offense, defense, this or that. Some coaches are great recruiters, some coaches are this or that. It's more about self-leadership, I think, at that stage of how are you motivating, because let's be honest, all these kids are phenomenal athletes, but how are you unlocking in them what they can unlock themselves? And whether that's bringing in like a Ryan Holiday to speak to them about stoicism, or that's bringing in someone to speak about, their finances, or that's bringing in someone from Facebook and Instagram to talk about, best practices on the platform. I personally think the CEO has to set up for everything matters. The assistant coaches are there. You're building your staff. You're delegating those responsibilities. But at the end of the day, what are you doing to operate? A lot of people on Twitter will say, they always say, Jay Wright at Villanova, Fortune 500 program. How are you building that program as a Fortune 500 company? And I think, whether you're approaching that as a young coach or someone with a startup or someone that maybe just writes a newsletter or does a podcast, how are you running that and learning from that and facilitating, your own growth by people that you are consuming content with, or people you have on as guests, people you talk to, or who are you surrounding yourself with? So yeah, I mean, the long and short of it is, I'm not a coach, but the ones that have been around, the ones that I think that are going to, there's been a baton passing. You've seen Coach K is retiring, Coach Jay Wright is retiring. The whole generation is retiring. There's a new guard the next 5 to 10 years of guys that are going to take advantage of being there and learning from the Hall of Famers, but also seeing the TikTok generation come. And those are the ones that I think are taking advantage of the CEO mindset of, I am not just here, to do X's and O's. I'm here to turn, young men and young women into better humans. And at the same time, while I'm doing that, hopefully by educating them and surrounding them with the right things, that will lead to, wins them, hopefully national championships.
Man, I'm inspired just listening to you, man. Like I love this. I promise we're going to step the Sherble stat in just a second here, but I kind of want to just ask you one more big picture question before we get to it. And that is, like, you work with these high level coaches, you work with these high level brands and executives and CEOs and athletes. So, like, these people that just command the room, like, how do you find it personally when you are sitting down with someone and teaching them something or questioning maybe some of their preconceived notions about things or trying to figure out who they really are and getting past maybe that persona that they're always so used to being on 24/7. How do you cut through and really figure out what makes them tick? Like these bigger than life people that you sit down with and truly help. Like, what's that experience like from your perspective?
Preparation. Prepare. If you know you're going to be in the room with someone, if you know you're going to have dinner with someone, if you know you're meeting with someone or pitching someone or proposing something, prepare. And a lot of the ways, obviously you prepare by Googling, that's easy. But connecting the dots and relationships and connections and relating it back to common, beliefs, common ground, common maybe friendships or connections. If you can cut through that, everyone's a human. Everyone is dealing with something that you don't know they're dealing with. Everyone has faced imposter syndrome at some point in their life or the career, whether they want to admit it or not. So, I've been very, very blessed and fortunate to be, at dinner and in the room with some pretty cool people. But, like I said, I keep saying this, just got to be genuine. You got to own who you are. And the question has to be well thought out, prepared for, and how is it relating to, you can't make it transactional. It can't be about, hey, I need this from you. It's more about, hey, how can I help you? Or, hey, I had this idea that I think would really, maybe you've never heard of it, or maybe you didn't know about it. And if you put the preparation in and you're honest with yourself, then I don't think it's, a nerve thing. I just think that everyone was there at some point in their life. And there's going to be good people and there's going to be bad people. You're going to have good experiences, you're going to have bad experiences. And you can write it off, or, hey, they just weren't in, the right mindset, or, hey, that wasn't the right situation. I definitely think you got to read the room. You got to understand the opportunity, and you have to provide value. How are you providing value in an honest, truthful way that your expertise, like if you have, if you know social media or this or that, then hopefully what you're talking about. And, if someone pushes back, then you can say, well, actually, I hate to say this and respectfully, that's like that's an old way of thinking, or this is a new way of doing this, or actually, the numbers have been turned on their head. Here's probably a better way to go about that more efficiently with less money. So I hear that, I get that. And yes, I mean, there are certain individuals in certain settings that are completely daunting, but I would go back to prepare, be honest with what you know, and really be honest with what you don't know. Don't try to say something or speak to someone or get out there and say, hey, I know so-and-so and whatnot, because the minute that you get out of that, they're going to call you on that. And then your door's shut. I see a lot of people that always try to name drop or this or that. If you don't have the shared relationship, that shared history where you can, basically meet in, in the middle, then I think it makes it harder and you lost your opportunity there. Develop a relationship. A lot of the best relationships and friendships that I have met that, whether they turned into clients or projects or, working together or whatnot, was just casual conversations from other friends and other, past people I've worked with that, eventually serendipitously, organically came together as, hey, this is a cool opportunity. Let's work together. Or can you help me with this?
Man, this is beyond my wildest expectations of how this interview would go. We got some great insight into not just the working with coaches and athletes and brands and all that, but just how to truly form relationships and how to, comport yourself with honesty, with vulnerability, with preparation. I just love it, man. We're gonna have some more fun with you, Alex, coming up in our shareable, in our Cervasio short segment. First episode shareable stat coming up right now. Just awesome stuff. Picking the brain of Alex. He is really articulate, really thoughtful about the stuff, and has a lot of great experience and a lot of good knowledge to give. And I'm taking mental notes as I speak with him. I hope you are as well. We're gonna have some more fun with him though, with our quick hitting question segment coming up. But first episode, shareable stat. This episode shareable stat is one you've probably seen bouncing around relatively recently. It comes from a Meta report in which they say, Zuckerberg says that around 20% or more of time spent on an Instagram app right now is happening with Reels. So whether that's good or bad, it's certainly they imply that it's growing. And as with this stuff always, if the social media, if the platform, if the brand, if the company is talking about something, is throwing a number like that out there in public, in the press release around their earnings report, it's probably means they're trying to promote that feature. So it's a good idea to go all in, or not all in necessarily, but certainly to devote time and resources to producing Instagram Reels. And we've also seen Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, talk about trying to not necessarily downgrade, but prioritize original content. So, sort of downgrading aggregated content, or also content, of course, coming from TikTok. We try to repurpose your TikToks there. We've heard that they don't like that in the algorithmic feed for Instagram Reels. It's also interesting to look at, what differences can you identify between TikTok and Instagram Reels? Is there a different audience? What content performs differently? Are there trends that transcend platforms? Are there trends that don't? Is Instagram Reels even conducive to trends as much as TikTok is on a daily basis? So start to understand where those platforms differentiate, where you can take ideas at least or principles and apply them to Instagram Reels, and look at what's performing there now. It's certainly going to be a more and more algorithmically driven feed, which means it's much more meritocratic, and it's going to take a little bit more to cut through the noise. So certainly an interesting stat to think about, to ponder about, and again, when Meta puts it out there for all to talk about and to see, it probably means it's a good idea to go in, make sure you're going on that part of the platform. So again, 20% plus of time spent in Meta in Q1 of 2021 or 2022, has been spent with Instagram Reels. So think about it, talk about it, and take action on it. And stick around for some quick hitting questions, but more fun stories, insights with Alex Cervasio. Right back from this episode's Shareable Stat, and I am joined once again by Alex Cervasio. He is the president of the Daily Coach, as well as the founder of Cervasio Consulting. And I just ran through a brick wall, and now I'm back. And Alex, are you ready to do some Cervasio shorts?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, number one. You were in Florida during a pretty fun time. I mean, Florida always has pretty good sports. But tell me, from your time at UF, the most memorable game. This is a hard one.
The most memorable game. I mean, like you said, I was on campus in Gainesville for arguably, I don't know if it will ever happen again, where the national championship in basketball and football in the same year. I will say the most memorable game for me was the culmination of Tebow's Heisman down in Miami, Florida, at the national championship against Oklahoma. Just the team, everything they went through, the promise, all that stuff, being down there with friends, family. There was never a moment of that game where we're not going to win this game. So it was just a collective, Gator Nation confidence that I will never forget. I'm getting goosebumps just saying it right now. It was amazing. Basketball was awesome, but when you win a national championship in football, especially with the Heisman Trophy quarterback, especially what that team went through, it was really, really special.
Oh man, I'm getting goosebumps listening to you. Who got more looks on campus? Would have been Tim Tebow or Joakim Noah? You couldn't miss him.
To be honest, I think I think it was a mix of both. The basketball and the football teams were very close. Obviously, the basketball team was more recognizable. They're just bigger dudes.
Yeah.
But you go out to Swamp or you go out to Cantina, you're on University Ave. They were all out. They're all having a good time. I can't wait for the 30 for 30. I mean, the talent and the people on campus at one time while I was there is just shocking to look back on. Athletes, students, you name it. Looking back at who was there and within our grasp, at the bar, at the pregame tailgate, in class is just crazy to think about.
Jeez, there's a lot of UF students right now who are saying, "Screw you, we want that too."
I think it'll come back. Yeah, it'll come back eventually.
Believe in Coach Napier. There we go. Number two. I know you have a good relationship with Buzz Williams, a really well-known basketball coach at Marquette, Valtech, at Texas A&M. So tell us about Buzz Williams. I even mentioned to you, I heard him on Part of My Take, and he kept on talking about this guy, Cervasio, who was helping him. I was like, holy shit, that's Alex. And so that got me to want to hear about your relationship with Buzz and how he has been in building his brand as a coach.
Buzz has done more for me outside of anyone, maybe just George Rowling and my own parents than anyone. He's one of the most inspiring guys that I know. What you see is what you get from Buzz. Everything he says, everything he puts out there is from the heart. It's from he's got an incredible story. I don't have time to get into now, but if you're interested in it, just his upbringing, how hard he worked and every ounce he puts into it. I was fortunate to be introduced to him by Coach Raveling when he was at Marquette. So I've known him for almost over 10 years. He had student managers at the time that I developed relationships, not knowing that they're now, the lead assistant at his coaching staff at A&M. So I would say that my relationship with Coach and who he is as a person transcends who he is as a basketball player, basketball coach. I've learned from him, from afar. I'm not there every day. I'm not in the practice, the 5 a.m. workouts, all that stuff. But texting, on phone calls, on Zooms, going back and forth when I am around him in person, it's just he's inspired me to be a better father for my kids and a better person. And I think he's one of the greatest coaches that we have in all of sports right now. And I'm not just saying that because I work with him, but on a personal level, he does it the right way, and he puts the pieces in place that makes everyone that comes in place for him, better in the long run, outside of basketball.
Oh, I love it. I mean, hearing him talk about how he builds it into his routine that he's going to make sure to send personal notes to people, like X number of people, every day. And it's that's how you do it. And it's amazing how dedicated he is to it. And you hear the passion in his voice too. It's awesome.
And I'll be honest, the part of my take thing, 6 years ago when he was at Virginia Tech, or I think it was the first time he went on there, and I had to pitch him on what part of my take was, and those guys, Big Cat and PFT and Hank, and what they've built. What they have, established there is a little different than, when I first got them on. I had to say, hey, listen, this is the #1 podcast. This is going to reach an audience that you don't reach. And I got to give Coach Williams credit. He's like, all right, let's do it. What do I need to know? Prepared him. He did a lot of research, listened to a lot of past episodes. And now he has a great relationship with Big Cat and those guys. And we were up there for the NIT and got a chance to finally get him in office in person at the Barstool headquarters. And it was cool. And everything you heard in that podcast, and if your listeners haven't listened to it, I definitely recommend it. It has nothing to do with basketball at all. It's more about life. It's more about, how do you set your schedule and how you overcome, maybe obstacles in your way. So, yeah, like I said, what you see is what you get. And I can't thank him enough.
Super cool, man. Just definitely a post trial for all the things that you were talking about in the interview as well. Being true to yourself, being authentic. And Buzz Williams definitely embodies that. Number 3, I want to talk about some good things, some positive things with the pandemic. It was obviously a lot of bad things with the pandemic, but tell me the best thing you did during the bulk of the pandemic was blank, whether it's a new hobby or something you accomplished or having a kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kid. We had we had our first daughter, my first child, in August 2019. So by the time the pandemic really hit in March and April, she was, finally to an age where she was developing, she was communicating, she was starting to crawl, walk, and all that stuff. So, I used to travel a ton for work, networking, clients, crisscrossing, what is the Final Four, All-Star Weekend, going to California, going to New York, going to Philly, going to Dallas. The pandemic was amazing. Didn't miss a moment from, basically April to, the end of the year. I was able to spend every almost waking second at home, working from home. Obviously there's some setbacks and there's some negative consequences of that. Mm. But looking back on it, I truly believe that is a special opportunity we had. We ended up having my son AJ, who's now 1, a little after, everything kind of went back to normal stuff. But if I look back, the most positive I say is, the pandemic caused me to slow down to understand the moment. And really, if you're gonna pick 2 years to raise 2 young kids and not miss out on vacations and weddings, it was something that really made me stop and understand that, building your business or building your relationship or Rolodex or your clients doesn't matter. Unfortunately, we all kind of got hit in the face with everyone was affected in some way, and it makes you stop and think of what really matters. And at the end of the day, it's family, it's your own health, it's your own happiness. So yeah, it was a huge positive. My daughter's 2.5 now. She's in preschool. She's talking up a storm. And I think it's because, the amount of time that my wife and I were able to spend with her, just almost every waking minute, working from home, trying to balance, 2 remote jobs. Thankfully we were able to continue working. A lot of people weren't, but it's definitely a huge positive. And it's a memory that I know she probably won't remember, but we will.
No, it's great to hear that amidst the pandemic, I think a lot of people got to experience that as well, where all of a sudden they got to spend more time with their family than ever. And it's great to hear the kids got to see plenty of dad during that time for sure.
Oh, they still do. Don't worry. But that was just like 24/7, 365 almost. It's a good, I think, out of every bad, obviously there's worse things that happen from that, but I try to focus on the good and hopefully don't forget that moment and don't take advantage of the good times, because like I said before in the show, everyone's dealing with something you don't know about, and how you handle that and how you react to that is up to you.
Yeah. Number 4, I'll mention this one because I need some advice myself. Tell me the most valuable resource that you have for keeping up with all the things going on in the greater digital social industry. It always changes, always tough to keep up with. What is your MVP resource?
So it's a mix of, I'm very protective of my following list on Twitter. So like I don't get over 1,500 who I'm following on Twitter. I don't get over 1,000 usually on like Instagram. So I'll cycle through direct sources of experts or thought leaders or people that, that I think are doing it correctly, that I want to emulate, that are putting it out there. So definitely making sure that I'm curating my Twitter feed correctly to what I'm trying to learn. If there's something new I'm leaning into, go out there and find the people that are doing it correctly on their own if they're putting it out there. A lot of people don't share that. But email newsletters are great to get that quick recap. I'm constantly, unfortunately, my wife would hate to admit this, but like I always have my phone around. I'm always connected. I'm always plugged in, and I'm always just trying to stay ahead of the changes and what's going on and who's doing the best and emulate success and stay ahead of, hopefully 95% of everyone else doing it, because they're not locked into this algorithm tweak or this new product feature, or, hey, this is coming up. Let's make sure we position ourselves to get content for this format or whatnot. I could list off a ton of people, individuals, a couple of newsletters and stuff like that. And would be willing to if you want it. But yeah, I just think it's all about what you're trying to learn and making sure you're following the right people and the right outlets.
No, totally. It's like we talk about like social media being one cog to being a successful coach and CEO of a college program. Like one successful cog of being successful in what you do and what I do is, having your finger on the pulse of what's going on out there, because it truly does matter, and you got to find a way to really keep up with it all. And it sounds like you're on top of things for sure, and it's a good thing to do for sure.
And I think a lot of things, people are always like, oh, what book on, marketing or this or that do I need to read? And by the time it gets to print, it's out of date. It's 18 months gone. Totally. So you need to have your, like you said, finger on the pulse with the people that are actually doing it, the people that are actually sharing it. And a lot, like I said before with you, I don't necessarily put out a lot out there content wise. I should definitely do more myself. But there are people out there that are sharing best practices, examples. This was a campaign that we had a lot of fun with. Industry insiders, stuff like that if you are following the right people, you can teach yourself and learn anything and create an advantage and a value extraction that separates you from hopefully a lot of the pack.
Yeah. Well, you set me up with a perfect segue to my next question, and that is number 5. Looking back on whether it was a single post or a campaign or a piece of content or a franchise, tell me your favorite one of those things that sticks out to you with all the folks you worked with over the years.
I would say, the one I had most fun with was Larry Markkinen, who plays for the Cavs now. We did a Road to the Draft series, and then ended up doing actually rookie season content series. He's from Finland, so it was the first time that the audience we're really creating for was twofold: was to introduce him to the Chicago fan base, the NBA fan base. Obviously fulfill the brand partners' goals that were funding it, but really to provide a insight into people back home in Finland, and like the views that we're able to get back home in Finland on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter was just incredible, because it was fun. Larry and I are still great friends. He had a great season with Cleveland. That was amazing. That was the first time that I had a Finnish speaking film crew over here, guys from Nokia HMD over here, stuff like that. So it was truly like an international campaign that turned into lifelong friendship.
Oh, that's so cool. And Finnish is not an easy language to pick up on, even words here and there.
No, listen, I give the Finns a lot of credit. They're brilliant people, and they all speak English. So thankfully.
There we go. I think what's really cool with that too, something that you and I talked about in our interview, but also even before, is the idea of these brand campaigns that have benefits for both sides. It's not just hey, we're going to pay you to post this. It's it's a great example of you guys talking about making sure the brand gets what they want out of this partnership, but also using it as an opportunity to build Lauri Markkanen's brand and get his name out there. And I love that mutual benefits, and that's really how it should be.
Yeah, like I think a lot of times, and we talked about it a little bit with NIL, a lot of these companies and brands come into it like, hey, I'm going to pay this athlete X amount because they have X amount of Twitter followers or Instagram followers, TikTok followers. When at the same time, like, what do you have? What is your traditional marketing mix? Do you have out of home? Do you have TV? Yeah. Do you have print? Whatever it is, you have a platform that you can then unleash them on. So it's not just a transactional thing. Hey, we're paying basically for impressions on Instagram videos. Great. Anyone can pay for impressions. Are you building a partnership that can grow their brand to an audience that's driving down the highway, or that's watching their local, TV, or that, goes to the event and picks up a printed material, while at the same time leveraging, their digital reach? So, I think that's kind of something that might have been missed in year one. Of the NIL space that people haven't picked up on, is that these companies and these brands themselves have a lot to offer the athlete, as opposed to just the athlete's, social media following offering the brand, an impression channel.
Oh, I love it. I always tell people, like, you can't use the words like sponsorship and partnership interchangeably. There's a difference, and you got to make sure if it's a partnership, then both sides should be using what they can to help each other.
Absolutely, it's always a two-way street.
Number 6 for you, Alex. You mentioned you've read a lot of books over the years, so maybe not one that's an outdated social media book, but tell me a book that you've read over your entire life that has stuck with you the most.
I would say anything by Walter Isaacson. Steve Jobs jumps out to me. Leonardo da Vinci, Ben Franklin. Though I love reading about people throughout history, leaders throughout history. Winston Churchill, Teddy Roosevelt, all those stuff. One book that really that I always go back on, Coach Raving actually gave me the first time I met him. Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi, just about relationship building and not really turning down opportunities and making sure that you're maximizing. Whether it's a lunch meeting or breakfast, or if you're in town for this or that. Is there someone you can reach or just have a conversation with that can help make you better? So, Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi, and then. I'm listing off more than one here. The four agreements by Ruiz, and anything by Ryan Holiday is a win in my book.
I like it. I have my list built now, and I've had some Isaacson in my past as well, and I love it. That's some good recommendations there. Number 7. Tell me your favorite athlete to follow on social media and why. It doesn't have to be active. It can be. So your favorite athlete to follow on social media and why?
Tom Brady, hands down.
Very nice.
Like we said, like we talked about before, if the greatest athlete, arguably of all time, finds the time to devote to not only winning Super Bowls at the age of 44, but to putting out social media content and staying up to date with what resonates with the audience, then anyone can find time to do it.
Very nice. Very nice. Oh yeah. His team is amazing. What he does is amazing. It feels authentic. That's a great call out there. Number 8, it's time for our food question. We gotta have a food question. I can't recall too much about my time in Central Florida and Orlando with great food. I ate at the same barbecue place every day because it was a league sponsor. So, but tell me, if I go down there to visit you, what's the best meal to get, and where are we gonna get it?
Yeah, I mean, Florida, there's so many opportunities. I live here in Orlando in Winter Park, Florida. Obviously, a little different than if you go down to Miami or Tampa. Amazing places to choose down there, but I'll keep it close to home. This place, Prado, which is an Italian spot, about 4 minutes from me. We go there almost. I hate to admit how often we go there, but it's got some of the best cacio e pepe in the world. So next time you come through, we'll go to Prado on Park Ave here in Winter Park, Florida, and make sure you get some good Italian.
It's on. I like it. Let's do it. Number 9, last one for you here, Alex. This might be one of the tougher questions, though. Which team will next make a Final Four in their respective sport? So whether either University of Florida football or University of Florida men's basketball. So we have the Final Four. We have the College World Playoff, which is kind of like the Final Four, and we have the Final Four in men's basketball. Which team will get there first?
That's easy for me. As a Gator, I think I'd have to go Coach Napier in football. And obviously he's a great person and a great coach. I think he's the right person for the program now. But as I mentioned before, everything matters. The football facility, multi-million-dollar facility that's been under construction for years, is finally opening up. The renovations to the strength and conditioning, the locker room is all changing over. The Jordan brand is there. All the pieces are falling into place. He's a guy that seems to get it, that everything matters, that the NIL collectives matter, that the boosters matter, that the technology and staying ahead of, the arms race, quote unquote, matters. Where I think some other coaches who came up a little earlier did not think that mattered. Nothing no knock on Coach Golden or the basketball program, but basketball is just harder to win. It's harder, especially now with the transfer portal, and you have to construct a new team every year. Whereas football, these guys, they can't leave for the NFL early. You're able to build a culture. You're able to build, a roster that started out as 17-year-old kids, and by the time they are 20, 21, hopefully are competing for national championships. So I definitely think the collective history there and the time spent football just makes it a lot easier to get back to the top.
So there we go. Watch out. Coach Napier is there. He comes off the Saban tree. He's been a highly coveted coach for years now, and we'll have to watch for it. It'll be fun to see.
I can't wait. Go Gators. Coach Napier is the right man for the job. I will see you in Atlanta at the SEC Championship this year. Calling it right now.
Calling the shot. I like it. All right, Alex, did a great job in your Cervasio short segment. Your chance to take over the podcast for a moment and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform that they're on, and why they're following.
This is tough. One guy that's probably I'm sure you've heard of because you follow a great wide variety, but maybe people haven't. Brian Rommel. He is a unique person. It's at Brian ROEMMELE on Twitter. He's just putting out future thoughts. He stays so ahead of the curve. I think he's a consultant. I don't even really know what he does. I know he's a voice expert consultant, but the guy is a technologist. I'd label him as. He is thinking in 2030, not 2020. So the stuff he puts out, the thoughts, the content, the videos, the history, they're all always thought provoking. They apply to anyone in any industry at any time in your life. So Brian Rommel is the one on Twitter that I would definitely tell everyone to go out there and follow and consume some of his content. It's all positive stuff, and in a mix of polarizing world and this or that, left or right, blue or red. This is all stuff that just leans into the human condition and how we can work together to be better, in the long run. So it's stuff from ancient Egypt to new technologies to book he read. He's definitely a very unique person and a great follow on Twitter.
Very nice recommendation. Yeah, we'll link it up and spell it out in the show notes. So check him out. Definitely a good follow there. And how about you, Alex? Where can we find you as well as all things Daily Coach and in Cervas Consulting on digital and social?
Yeah, I'm just at Cervas, CVAS on Twitter, on Instagram. Reach out to me there. Please go and follow the Daily Coach as well. You can subscribe. We didn't really get into much about that, but that's a daily newsletter that myself, George Raveling, and Michael Lombardi, and Kamadi Ramsey founded. And it originally started as a book, kind of piggybacking off Ryan Holiday, who's a close friend of Coach Ravs and the Daily Stoic, but it turned into almost a pseudo media company that we're building here on the side. And hopefully it inspires you in your inbox every morning. So find me on Twitter. That's probably the best place to reach out. Send me a DM. I'll get back to you. And if there's anything that can help anyone or anything, please do not hesitate to shoot me a message.
Hell yeah. Check out Alex. And we got to do like a podcast part 2 to talk about the Daily Coach, the great leadership and messages in there in your inbox every day. And cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast today, Alex. Learned so much, got inspired, got interested, and it's really loved being able to speak to you today. And thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it, Neil. Really, really thank you for having me. And it's been fun following your journey from afar and hope to get you down here to Winter Park so we get some pizza at Prado soon.
Hell yeah. Thanks so much again to Alex Cervasio. Just does great work working with athletes, with coaches, with brands, with CEOs on their strategy across digital, social, technology. And, of course, continues to work on the Daily Coach with George Raveling, Mike Lombardi, and Kamadi Ramsey. Definitely recommend you subscribe to that newsletter. It's just great daily inspiration for you and leadership tips as well, and great for anyone. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287. We'd love to hear from you. Also on LinkedIn, where I post more content. Visit the website, as always, dsmsports.net for more content and episodes there. And, of course, check out the podcast, subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss a single episode. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.